Okay, let's have a quick look at the accounts feature within Rhino. So number one objective is how can we create something that's really simple and hides all the complexity of accounting for the business owner whilst retaining all the flexibility required by the accountant. Okay, so let's have a look at how we do it. Okay, so we have this new link, which is this new menu area, which is for the accountant. And let's just look at the basic building blocks. Essentially, there's three things. We can set up account codes. So we can have sales account codes. A very important design feature is this will be shipped with one nominal code for sales. So when the business enters in an invoice, for those that don't need the complexity, they won't even see any reference to nominal codes. Rhino will detect if there are multiple codes available for sales and will prompt them. It'll provide them with a drop down to select which one, if they require that sophistication. That's quite important. The same with the expenses. Okay, lots of subtleties here with expenses. Probably the biggest one is the expenses tend to mirror the expense types used by the business, but you often might want to group the expense types into one expense type. For example, you could have flights, trains, car parking, different mileage rates, but you want all of that to be entered at that level of detail, but routed through to one entry on your P&L. Okay, so we enter in all of the account codes, and then what we do is we can define the structure of the balance sheet. So the balance sheet, there tends to be three areas in a balance sheet: assets, liabilities, capital and reserves, typically fixed assets, current assets. Now, what we have is, so we can ship this standard straight out of the box. But for enterprise customers who've got a more sophisticated requirement, we can allow them to add in other categories of assets. Okay. Same applies to the P&L. So we can have a really simple P&L layout. So we can see all the account codes that are routed through here. Same with administrative expenses. So we can keep it really simple, or it can be more complex. We could add in different areas, yeah, and we see which section they fall into, yeah. Some nice type of flexibility there. Okay, so the next big thing is the workflow engine that we've designed. So everything in a computer system, it's all process driven. So we've got a series of processes. So for example, when we finalize an invoice, when we, if we did a credit note, if we receive some money in, and then we've got other costs and other income. We'll cover this later on. Very important concept of Rhino. So Rhino's not just an account system. It's designed to run your entire business. So instead of just having account codes that link to the P&L and balance sheet, we could have account codes which are key performance indicators. So we could monitor every aspect of the data that's logged in Rhino, everything from time recording information, so that's productive time, chargeable time, etc., to estimates, estimate that we won, lost, terminated, and so on. So we can monitor all of this, and we can really capture some incredible information using this process engine. Okay. Let's look at one example that we've done earlier. So let's have a look at finalizing an invoice. So when you finalize an invoice, there's certain rules that should happen. So for example, we should take the gross amount, okay? So the invoice table, the gross amount, and we want to debit the debtor's control account. For the VAT, we want to credit the sales tax control account. And this one's quite interesting. For the net amount, okay, very important. We have this concept in Rhino of having a very simple invoice, which is they just type in the amount. So it's all of the information stored in the header. So we take the net value in that case. But if there's multiple lines, we take the invoice detail total net field, and we use whichever account code or nominal code they've used on the transaction. We inherit it and we credit that account. It's that simple. Okay, this is all very technical. The customer will never see any of this. This just allows us to map all of the accounting rules and embed them into Rhino, but it also gives huge flexibility. In particular, if we were to roll this out into other countries, for example, you might want to, when you finalize an invoice, you could have tax amount 2, 3. So in the US, you've got local, state, and federal taxes, and you might want to process them in different ways. Okay, so that's finalizing an invoice. We've also modeled doing a credit note. Save credit note, yeah. And we've also done the money in process and so on. So let's see this now in action. So once all of that will be hidden, it'll be pre-packaged, the customer won't see any of it. Okay, so it works something like this. So I'm going to go and do an invoice. Customers are already doing this. They've been doing this now for years in Rhino. You can select a customer, Joe Blogs. I'm going to do a very simple invoice, and I'm going to say it's for products. Once again, this would not appear if I've only got one nominal code for sales, and it's for 100, say 100, and you would type 20% VAT. So there's the gross, and we simply say save, finalize the invoice. At that point, it gets posted. If we click over here, we can actually see what's happened. So I did this, put in this little screen just so that we could validate everything, but then we actually found loads of uses for it, which we'll come on to in a second. So in this particular example, we can see that we've debited the debtor's account, and we've credited the product revenue and credited the tax account. Okay. And whilst we're testing all of this, we're constantly checking all of this in the database as well. Okay, so the debits have to match the credits. Okay, so we're keeping an eye on that as we define the rules. We've done the same when you do a credit note, when you receive money in, it's constantly updating everything. So we'll go into all of that now. So let's have a quick look at expenses. We have extended this. So there's 3 types of expense now. There's personal card. So when you enter in this expense, they would have to go through a process where it could be you enter in, you paid for it yourself, and then it needs to be reimbursed. So that's a different set of credits and debits that need to happen. Same with the company card. And we also have the concept of a supplier bill. And the idea there on a supplier bill is if I click on here and I do a, let me see, an asset or whatever, then I can select the supplier and so on. I can enter it, and then it can have different statuses to say whether it's paid or not. So once again, different set of credits and debits when that happens. All of this will come pre-configured for each expense type. Okay. And don't want to go into detail here, but when you configure an expense type and you click on here, you can actually set up different rules for credit and debiting depending on the status of an expense. This is a type of sophistication that you would expect to see in a big ERP system, but I'm a very strong believer that we need to build something that's simple, but capable of scaling with an organization as it becomes more sophisticated. Otherwise, people run into dead ends very quickly, and you don't want to be changing your account system, if you can help it. So if that's your expenses done, so we just do a few examples. We click on expense, and what would the user see? Okay, so just personal expense. So just bought something or stayed somewhere. So an accommodation, click on here, and it was 100. And we deliberately get the user to type in this because this is a legal thing. They have to identify how much VAT they paid. So that should be 120 really. They type in how much VAT because you could have an invoice with multiple VAT rates, etc., etc. And also, if you did just click on save, it'll prompt you that you should really have a receipt on there, but obviously no in this particular case. Okay. The same with company cards, same with supplier bills, etc. So just add in another one. So meals and entertainment. And I don't have a VAT receipt, so I'll just input 0, click on this, and then we can enable an approval process, which will send this through to the line manager, and then it goes forward for payment and so on. So that's the expense types and so on. So the next thing what we'll do is if we click up here, that really helps us a lot. It covers a lot of scenarios, covers our invoicing, cash sales, and our expenses. Okay, happy days. But there's other stuff that'll happen in your business that's non sales or direct expense, like direct staff expense. There's other things that'll happen. Probably, and what we've done is we've built the ability in the process engine to be able to model anything. So this could be the receipt of a government grant, COVID payment, anything. So I'll demonstrate how we do that. And the example I'm going to use is a payroll process, which is probably the most complex, one of the most complex processes you've got in a business. Yeah. So you've got all of these components: gross pay, employee national insurance, employee PAYE, pension, and then net pay, and then you've got the employer's contribution. And then down here, just to help visualize all of this. So PAYE, national insurance control, this particular account. In the accounts, you need to credit that, and that consists of the the employer's national insurance, the employee's PAYE account, and the employee's national insurance account. And the same with pension control. You want both the employer and personal contribution going into that account. Okay. So this is quite a complex process. Once again, we're able to model that process in about 5 minutes in the rules engine. So we click on here and we type in payroll. Okay. And I'll just make the screen small so we can see. So for each of these data entry fields, we need to do something. So for the gross payment, we need to debit gross pay. We need to debit the gross pay account. Okay. So we click on here. So we want to credit the, no, sorry, I'm clicking on, I'm looking at the wrong one, payroll. Okay. So payroll, gross pay, click on here, and we want to debit the gross pay account. Okay. And then we work our way down and we manage, we process each of these figures. Okay. So, and that's it. So let's see now, this looks very complicated, but let's see what it's like for the end user. So it's monthly payroll. Just before I move off that, someone did ask the question when I demoed this that, well, you've got, should these figures not be calculated? Quick answer is they shouldn't, because you've got, typically you'll do a payroll run, you'll have multiple employees, and this is a sum. You normally post the sum of all the values for all the employees. Okay. So if I just use this particular example and I click on other cost, and I select which process, so it's payroll process, and that gives me all of the fields to do a entry in 3,000, 234, 600, 150, 2016, employer's national insurance 270, 150, And this could be the January payroll. So run on the 25th. And this is the Jan payroll. Yeah. Click save, job done. Okay. Click back. We open up this here. We can now see under other costs. And if we click on here, we drill in and we can see this. And if you edit this, it always brings back the group that we posted together for that particular transaction. Okay. Now, for the technical people who are looking at this, it would be very easy to actually turn a process into an API. And that's quite exciting because you could then take a direct feed from a payroll system. That's the objective. Okay, so so that's it really. We've been sort of testing all of this as we go along. We keep testing. We normally test each transaction, make sure all the debits and credits are good. There's loads more sophistication in here. If I go into the invoice, just to show you, we're now going to do a more complicated invoice. So complex invoice, and we're going to say it's got detailed line items. Okay, so we're going to sell some products. Okay, and we've sold £1,000 of products. We've sold some installation services. That. Okay, and then finally we've got some. We're going to maintain the. We're going to maintain. And this, correctly. And this is a very simple maintenance contract, £120. Click on save, click back, and we do some missing information, the customer. Okay, so we've now got a multi-line invoice in there, and we click on finalize. Okay, great, don't need to worry about it. But if you had a slightly more complicated, if you want to account for this in a more complex way, you could actually click on here and say, do you know what, this, yes, this is in terms of the VAT return and everything, the tax, it'll use the invoice date, but we actually want to be able to account for this in a more sophisticated way. So we click down here, and our maintenance, it doesn't start until March. And it actually runs for 12 months. Okay, so it now just spreads out all the postings and so on. This is quite interesting. So it gives you loads of sophistication. Okay, so I'm just going to summarize. Click back here. Good place to summarize. We've got all our sales income. We could also define, for a financial advisor, for example, we could define a very simple process to capture all the different types of income. The same with any other process, so receiving a director loan, repaying a director loan, anything that we can model in here using the process engine. And then just have a quick look. So we're about 95% complete now with this, but if we look at the balance sheet, for example, I asked the guys to do a quick report to extract the source data underneath, so we can simply run this for the up until the end of the month, and we run it, and we can now see how all of the different account codes within the different categories, within the different sections within P&L are being populated. And we can do the same with the P&L. Once again, this report's only done We only did this so it helped us validate the data. This isn't the P&L report, but it does validate the data that will be in the P&L report. Yeah. And it's quite exciting. It's all coming together beautifully. And I think there's probably about, from a technology point of view, probably about 1 to 2 weeks work remaining, and we'll have a complete end-to-end account system. So I'm going to summarize. We will be able to ship this where the accounting part of this is like a black box, okay? And this could be in a free version or a low-cost version of the software. But we could also provide an enterprise license that allows people to go in and update this. And this would be the same level of sophistication you would expect in a very expensive ERP solution. And I'm a real strong believer that you can design in the simplicity, but it's incredible if you can design that simplicity so that it can scale if it needs to. And that's what we've achieved. Okay, so that's the update. Yeah, we're just going to keep at it, and we should have it completed shortly.